See.
Oh, you got it? Okay, good.
I
don't, the way I signed in, I don't have it.
I got
at
it.
the moment.
Yeah, I got a red button at the bottom. I'm good.
Okay, good. And then does it say recording?
Yep.
Oh, yep, good. Perfect. There you go. We see it. Okay, perfect.
Okay. All right. So we have had a few little glitches here, but I think we're all set.
I'm going to mute myself, and I will talk to you gals on the other side.
Okay. All right. Welcome to the 6th webinar that's planned for the Connecticut Art Standards Rollout. I'm Cindy Parsons hosting today's session. This is going to be our final webinar that's been presented by educators from across the disciplines over the past several weeks. Hopefully these webinars have helped arts educators learn more about the new standards and how to implement them into their classrooms. Today we have Eileen Schneider, high school art teacher and program coordinator in Rocky Hill, Connecticut. Eileen's presentation will be focused on using new standards to align with a digital portrait unit that uses music as its inspiration. During her presentation, you're encouraged to use the chat box that you can see on your screen. It should be on the right side of your screen to submit questions, which Eileen will respond to after the presentation. You can find the chat box in the lower right part of your screen, I believe. You may also submit comments and respond to others' comments during the presentation. This webinar will be archived and available for viewing later on at your convenience. And without further ado, Eileen, welcome, and thanks for taking the time out of your busy schedule to be with us this afternoon.
Thank you, Cindy. I am hoping that everybody can hear me. When you came to me and asked if I could do a webinar about the standards, of course, my mind went immediately to, you know, rewriting curriculum, because that's what we're doing at our school right now. So, you know, we're having to realign all these units and adjust them accordingly to meet the new standards. So I'm going to present the digital portrait unit that we've been doing, and what I thought I'd do is just start talking about the unit itself, like a little background on the unit, a description of the unit, what the students need to know, what they will learn, you know, and all the little elements that go into that. And then we'll talk about how it aligned with the older standards and how we've changed it or adjusted it to align to the new standards. And we'll see how that goes. The unit is basically part of the background is that this is an entry-level digital design course, so it's 9 through 12, students 9 through 12. And of course, our main focus is teaching them principles of design, but because it's a digital course, you know, we have a secondary goal of making the students proficient in the industry standard software. We have the Adobe Illustrator and Photoshop packages here. And they also get a credit for technology or literacy. So we also have to cover within the class, you know, basic operations, directory structures, and get them proficient with using the software. Everybody thinks that these students, because they've grown up on technology, that they understand the computer and how it works, and I find that that is not the case. So we do spend a good bit of time on that as well. Our assignments are arranged so that we have design exercises where we're focused on the design principles, but basically teaching the software. And then we have a culminating project. And what I'm going to talk to you today is the culminating project. The culminating project for the Illustrator section is was inspired by an article that I saw on NPR. It was a brief history of music's alter egos. And since we're in high school and since identity is a big issue for these students sometimes, you know, I thought it would tie in really well with, you know, where they are developmentally. Then I saw another article about like musical understanding, and they were trying to test whether it increases your, verbal abilities and everything. And what they discovered was that there was a strong correlation between being able to recognize auditory patterns and visual patterns, and that got me thinking, wow, we could make this work within this unit. So what we started doing was we decided it should be a self-portrait, so dealing with identity, and that they should incorporate music somehow. And so we talk about music, the importance of music in their life, the genre. They have to identify a genre that means something to them and select a specific piece that will serve as their inspiration. From that, they have to identify the rhythm, the mood, the feeling, the overall feeling, and then try and figure out how they can communicate that visually. So there's a rhythm, a sound rhythm that correlates, with color and with shape and with line and with all these things. So we talk about that connection. Because it is a portraiture unit, we also talk a little bit about the history of portraiture, the importance of portraiture, get Kandinsky in there for the musical relationship, and all the normal unit design elements are there. The prior learning that these students have to have is an understanding of the Adobe environment. We talk about vector versus raster. We talk about Bezier curves, the tools. They do several assignments. One of the first assignments they do is a line assignment where they're trying to also communicate emotion with line and value, and we're focusing on emphasis and movement in that assignment. They go through a notan assignment, which deals with the shape tools and the pathfinder, how to use the distortion tools, how to create contrast and value, using space, using balance. And then they've had an op art assignment just so that they're dealing with the pattern tools in Illustrator, distortion, that we can do bump mapping in that first project here with the hand. She bump maps her op art onto the hand, so that was uninteresting. This one incorporated herself using Photoshop. So we start branching out a little bit. But then we get into the meat of this particular assignment. And this assignment, we talk about music. Because of that, and I'm going to talk about it later, but because of the emphasis on making thinking visible in the new standards and really focusing on process and on creativity and on how you get from here to there, we, have incorporated a lot more iterative handouts that take them through each little step. They have a step where they identify which music is important to them, and there's a whole, handout, and they've got to spend a little time researching that. How it identifies with their identity. They have to, even though I'm not a music teacher, they have to kind of listen to the music kind of over and over and really feel how the rhythm is moving, the speed, and where the beats and the rests are. And I have them keep a journal, which I never used to have them do, where they are, while they're listening to their music, I want them to kind of free associate and start, just like doodling or drawing lines or shapes or trying to, nail down that rhythm. And identify the different layers of that rhythm. We look at some apps where it visualizes music for you. There's some on, the iPhone. and some of these other phones. And you know, we look at a couple of those, and we talk about the limitations. I mean, these things are being generated randomly from the sound wave, maybe, but they're also, even though there's an element of randomness, there's also kind of like a fixed method of conducting, of the way the things conduct themselves across the screen. And so we talk about the limitations and how their interpretation should differ from these apps. And, you know, we've already done pattern creation, so we do talk about that again and kind of go deeper into that. Some of the PowerPoint slides, you know, we're talking about pattern and rhythm and visual rhythm and motif, which you find both in music and in visual art and design. We talk about the different types of rhythm, you know, offset, alternating, regular. Talk about how text can be used as, you know, to create pattern and create a rhythm, and there's a sort of a rhythm in this. And then, you know, we get started, and they've really got to think about how they want to pose themselves and how that pose is going to play into the overall mood and what they want to communicate about themselves and about their music. And of course, because it's a portraiture unit, like I said, we do look at the history of portraiture and some of the more interesting portraits throughout some viewpoints. We talk a little bit about viewpoint and what you can communicate. We do a comparison between the digital portrait versus the painted portrait. So these are all, you know, parts of any art unit. And then we start looking at, well, what are they going to need to do to build up that portrait? And we look at some portraits that have been done, you know, that are related to music in some way. And then they begin working, you know, and they have to come in with their, you know, pose. And that pose, so she dressed herself up because she likes the goth look or the goth music. And she took this picture specifically for this project. And this student really likes, you know, kind of a smooth pop type music. It makes her feel just really like, I don't know what you'd call that, but so this was the pose that she took. And once they get their portrait down, then they've got to integrate this pattern. So we spent a lot of time talking about pattern and music and rhythm and all of these things, and they, you know, we listened to the Gorillas, and I picked Gravity because it changes so drastically in the few moments when you listen to it. We don't have to listen to it now. I was going to try and play it, but it changes so drastically as you listen to it that I use that as a kind of a jumping off point. We listen to blues, we listen to classical, we listen to different things. And they start brainstorming, they start playing their own music for the class, and we have, you know, there's a lot more group kind of collaboration that happens now as a result of the newer standards that, you know, it used to be just do this on your own, and we're really trying to incorporate that group work. They develop their pattern, they overlay themselves, and then, you know, this is what happens. So this gentleman likes the blues. There's a very regular, you know, rhythm to the blues and pop, and, you know, everybody's got their own interpretation of, you know, music and how it makes you feel. This is a very popular unit here because it's the first time they're trying to do a larger project, but they've got so many things that they're putting in, and they love music. And to make that connection between music and visual is it's a strong section. It's a strong unit. Now we'll talk a little bit about the actual standards. So in in this unit, I mean, we do incorporate the normal things that are, you know, integral to a cohesive unit. They have a prior knowledge assessment before they come into this unit. There are checklists, there's worksheets, there's a lot more of them so that they can really kind of see their thinking. And we also added this journal, which I think has been really helpful because they get, and some of them don't do it, but enough of them do that, you know, they come in and they're like, oh, you know, I was listening to that piece, you know, during study hall, and you know, I thought this and that, and they get very excited about it. We do an informal in-class critique while they're working on the portrait so that they get feedback at a point when they can actually make changes, or recognize that things aren't working the way they think they're working. And then, of course, you have the whole summative assessment after the, I think, you know, with Carol Dweck and with, you know, all of these, you know, the emphasis on visible thinking, that this process has become so much more important in our classroom than the summative assessment. The summative assessment is almost, you know, not as important. It's all about the learning and the understanding, and you can identify that much more readily. Yeah. This slide I took. I don't remember where I must have gotten this from the NAEA, but I thought it was a great slide that shows you, you know, where the 1980s, because the standards hadn't been rewritten in total since 1994, and what it was about there, what it has in common with the 2014 standards, and then where we are now. Oops. And what's happening with the standards now. So this unit in the past, we you know, hit, well, we kind of didn't hit three. We hit all six. You know, there was the media, you know, applying media, conceiving and creating a work, the using knowledge to solve specific visual art problems, and the visual art problem is, of course, the rhythm. Understanding in relation to the history, of course, is in each section. Reflecting or critique, which is a big part of the art curriculum, and then making connections. So you see some of these things are actually still similar. You still have create. We're still doing art criticism, which is the responding. We're still making connections. One of the things I'm excited about with the 2014 standards is that they've now added presenting, and presenting adds a whole another layer of understanding to the students. So, you know, they have to analyze the work. They got to figure out which ones they want to show. They have to mat those works. They have to, you know, when you work professionally in art, presentation is a big part of being able to succeed. So I'm so glad that it's in these standards now. The other thing that's nice about the new visual art standards is they differentiate. It's almost rubric ready. They got proficient, accomplished, and advanced at the high school level. So it's all kind of spelled out already. I happen to have the visual arts standards at a glance, which if you don't have that, you should definitely get it, especially if you're rewriting curriculum or you're writing curriculum. This is really quite nice. It not only has the anchor standard, it has the enduring understanding, which they've included now. So even though we don't use the same things, it gives you kind of a starting off or a jumping off point. The essential questions, the grade level from K through, you know, 12, but it also gives you this Bloom's taxonomy, or the different, the higher order thinking words that you're going to be using for the unit. So how has this changed, really? How has the unit changed in response to the visual arts standards? The creating part hasn't changed as that much, except with the exception of adding all of those extra worksheets that really make their process more clear to them, what they're thinking, how they're, making the jump from thought to execution. So the creating was part of the old standard. It's still here, generating and conceptualizing artistic works. Investigating, some of the words that they throw in here are great. Investigating, so we spend a lot more time on the planning process and the thinking process and the organization, so that you've got organization and development of work, refining the artwork. That's a new thing. That was not in so much the older standards. But that's an important part, because with the formative assessments, they have the opportunity to go back and to revisit and to change and to try and make the thing more successful, because it is a continuum. You're creating things. There's no right or wrong. It's a part of a continuum. You're learning, and each time, you're learning a little bit more, and you're taking yourself into a different direction. This standard I really love, the presenting standard, because we actually have an end of the year show that they have to curate. These students actually have to curate. They have to look. They only get to pick a couple of the works that they did. They have to pick their strongest works. They have to identify why they picked those works. They have to put it up. When they put it up as a class, we look at it. They have to decide, value-wise, what goes where. There's a whole lot of parts of presenting your work that they don't understand until they have to go through that process. Matting, which, we've always done, they are part of that process. Really thinking about, what should go where. It's a very important portion. Responding, of course, art criticism is part of every visual arts unit. So the responding portion hasn't, if you look at the old standards, the reflecting, responding is a little bit the same, with the exception of kind of the ongoing nature of responding that happens now. They're responding to the historical piece, which I think is what this is mainly focused on, is interpreting works and evaluating works. But they're also taking that knowledge and they're responding to their own work and trying to figure out where they can change things and improve. And connecting is a big portion of the new visual arts standards, and I think that's important. It's not just being part of, another discipline, or, hey, we connected it to another discipline. It's really looking at and observing and doing some research and trying to gain a deeper understanding in both. Like for this assignment, they really gain a deeper understanding both of the art or the visuals that they see, but also of music. And like I said, I'm not a music teacher, but I think that they, when they're listening to it so intently because they have to solve this problem, they end up hearing and learning things that they, may not have even been aware of previous to that. So as far as the 2014 standards, the creating, kind of iterating that process out a little bit more, the planning process, and making them really think about and making, like I said, that thinking visible is an important part. The presenting, I think I've covered it, is very important to me, who worked in New York City, who, you know, it's make or break your ability to present. Responding to our criticism and then connecting it. I think we're connecting on a deeper level during this. Now, I had measured that out, and it took me 45 minutes when I said all that, and I seem to have gone through it in half an hour. So,
Allison,
not sure where you want to go with that.
Allison, if you can unmute people, maybe they have questions that they want to ask of Eileen.
Yes.
Eileen, I have a question. Is all of the work that you've been showing your students' work?
Yes.
Well,
with the exception of during the, you know, these things are not.
Yeah.
These are part of the demonstrative, but everything else is the student work, and they really do respond to this quite well. They end up at the end of the year. You know, I give a little evaluation, and that's the piece that they learn the most from and that they love the most, is this portrait piece.
You're teaching Illustrator, specific tools in Illustrator with this particular unit.
Yep. So with the previous with the prior learning, and it is important that they do that, or else it would be overwhelming. This project, because it focuses so highly on the music and the connection and the ability to try and see the rhythm and everything, they have to know how to do all of these basics before that. How to use, you know, when we talk about line, we talk about you know, creating emotion with just line, and I teach them all the line tools and the blend tool, which allows you to replicate lines, you know, evenly spaced, and we talk about emotion, and then they go ahead and they come up with such different things. Every single one of them comes up with such a different thing. It's a joy to behold, but it is an exercise. You know, I think that's why they love these culminating things, because they truly are projects that they understand.
And ladies, I'm sorry for the interruption. Cindy, it will not let me unmute. I don't have privileges, so if you could do that in the all attendees, I think you have the option to do that.
Okay. Just hit, do I hit allow?
Yeah, it'll give you the option to unmute if you just double click on everybody's name.
Got it. I can't get to all of them for some reason. There we go. All right, can everybody hear us?
Yep.
So everybody can respond. Is there any questions out there for Eileen? This is a great presentation. I love the work and how you're getting students to think more creatively about emotional quality, getting the emotional qualities of the music in there.
You know what's funny is I had all these, like, you know, worksheets and everything that I had, but then I ran over, so I took them all out.
Oh, that's all right. That's okay. Does anybody have anything to say or questions for Eileen?
I was actually, Eileen, this is Holly Constantine. I was just curious how long this unit usually takes. It looks pretty long, so I was just curious how long this unit
So each of these exercises, well, the first couple weeks are devoted just to, like, navigating, you know, and the getting used to technology. And then each of these exercises takes about 2 weeks, which leaves us about 3 to 4 weeks to do this project. But they already know the tools. It's about 3 weeks, I'd say, 4 weeks for the stragglers. They already know the tools, so it makes it a lot easier.
So they've already had experience with Illustrator.
Right, with the exercises prior, and then that leaves us. So by like half semester, we finished the 3 exercises, introducing the principles, introducing Illustrator, introducing the different tools, and have finished this project.
Great.
That's not too bad, actually. I don't think.
No, and then we spend the next, the second semester on Photoshop, learning Photoshop, doing a tampering project, and where they put themselves in a magazine, and then we do a collage at the end of that unit.
Is this a full year class?
No, it's half the semester.
Okay. So they could take it like the first courses. What course is this for? What class is this?
So this is Digital Design 1. It's kind of the sister to Drawing 1. So Drawing 1 teaches them more the elements, and Digital Design teaches them more the principles. And then depending on which direction they want to go, they can either go, traditional painting, or they can keep going in Digital Design by going into typography and advertising.
That's great. Some of these patterns that the kids have created, are those brush patterns that they've created, or?
So yeah, what this so each one does a different thing. This student found this flower. It was in the prefab. However, he broke the link from the prefab, made it into a brush, and then brushed it on. And this is a prefab pattern. This guy made a brush out of these notes, so he sat there and meticulously made the lines with the notes, then made a brush, and with the brush you can use a profile. It'll make it smaller on one end and larger on another. And then he just had fun trying to get these waves in here. That's just a standard pattern.
Just go back to that one.
That one?
Did they start off with digital photos?
Yeah, so we start out, so they have to take a photo. She brought in a photo because she was doing country music. She goes fishing with her father every summer, and she loves country music. So she had this photo she really wanted to use. I don't know what the background has to do with country music, and neither did the class. So she had a lot of explaining to do. But
that's really a good comment, because the photo, the portrait is very well done.
Yeah.
But kids tend, at that age, often we see kids have a disconnect between, their subject matter and their background. They kind of think that as a add-on, or as something that they don't really have to consider. So some of the issues that I have with this are either they take the music too literally. I didn't include a couple of portraits. These are the better portraits. I probably should have. There's a couple where, like, the girl that picked a song that was about, you light me on fire or something, and she had little fires in the back. And so we talk about, well, okay, that's a very literal thing. That isn't the assignment. The assignment is to try and get the mood from the rhythms and everything. And we actually, and the kids are, because we start off by making sure that everybody feels comfortable with critiquing each other, they really do by this point, easily talk to each other and say, man, that is so not, not working, This one was one. They really weren't seeing the country, and I'm not getting it either. But it's a nice. That's really good. I think that's a great comment, and hopefully she learned that to unify a piece, it has to be foreground and the middle ground and the subject matter, etc.
Yeah. And then some of them can make can make the connection. I was having a hard time figuring out, but there's these, she was using this music that had these rhythms that did seem to drip, and you know, when she pointed it, I didn't hear it immediately, but then when she pointed it out, I was like, oh, okay. Yeah, I get it.
Defend it, yeah.
So as long as they can defend it, they're all right. Some of them, you know, can't. This one, he just liked pop music. It makes him feel bubbly, and so he did, you know, bubbles. So you know, she was using the text from the song. She likes this screamo stuff, and the background actually went with the music she played. So they have to play the music. They have to identify what they were, you know, they have to point to the things in the assignment that, you know, made them, you know, put that in. This guy was blues, and he was just like, because the blues are so repetitive with their bass rhythm, he just had the same thing kind of going all the way across. And it really did feel, it was very monochromatic, and he talked about how he used, you know, he didn't want to use any flashy colors or anything. So.
Cool. Anybody else have any questions out there?
The work is beautiful.
It really is.
This is Jill. Yeah. Hi, Eileen.
Hey, how are you?
Great results. Great results. I got to see some of these in
I love it. It looks. I love it. Really hits the at least 3 for sure of the artistic processes.
Yeah.
Right.
And how they understand that. That's what's so cool about it.
And they understand it more because of all of the you know, iterative handouts that I did not used to use, and now I've quite increased the amount of thinking that they have to put out there and talk about.
And what's great about it too is that even though they still have to come up with their own thoughts, it helps them to formulate their thoughts. It gives them some kind of structure, so it's not just like, okay, do whatever you want, you know, and then they just breathe.
Right.
And you do still have those students who, you know, just you know, I probably could have included examples of weaker and stronger so that you could get a sense of, you know, the weaker ones, like I said, that literal one, she couldn't, and you know what, at the end of the unit, I didn't feel like she actually did get it. She just was really stuck on the, you know, but it's a fire, you know.
Right.
So.
We all have those students, so.
Yeah.
All right, well, if there's no other questions, one last request. If anybody has anything out there, let's say it now. We're going to start off. All right, well, thank you, Eileen. This is great. This session should be archived in the next few weeks, and it will be available. Once I get all of the links for all the archive sessions, they'll be made available on the websites. CAEA website, State Department of Ed website. And I'm going to try and send them out to people that had registered for the session. I'm not sure that I got all the addresses, so I may miss some of you, but look for them. Thanks again for joining us today.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. So